Memory is a strange thing. Some people are blessed with a good memory of things that happened in the past. Unfortunately, I'm not, so I'm not going to talk about memories from when I came to New Zealand, but I want to talk about a time when I went back to Denmark. So we came to New Zealand, I was a 5-year-old, and it was in 1950, October 1950. We actually arrived in Auckland at this, where we're standing now, at Birkenhead Wharf. And then the next time I went back to Denmark was 1967 on my OE. And then the time after that is when I want to talk about. That was in 2001. And my husband and I went back, Paul and I went back to England and to Europe. And coincidentally and fortunately, just before that, through Esther Barrett, I had met a couple from Odense, where I was born. They were called Greta and Sven, and they, when we were getting to know each other, they said, "Where were you born?" And I said, "Odense." "Where did you live?" I said, "Clausens Allee." They said, "We live in Clausens Allee." And they lived at number 9 and I had lived at number 2. So when we went in 2001, they invited us to stay with them, which was lovely. And they arranged for me to visit the house where I had lived for the first 5 years of my life. And an old lady lived there now, her name was Formose. She'd lived there since we left in 1950, and this was 2001. And I had taken with me some small photographs of me, probably as a 3-year-old, down in the garden of that house where she was living. And I thought, I'll just take these photos and see if any memories come back. So I had the photos. I went down into the garden at the back of the house and I looked at the photo, looked at the house, and it was exactly the same as on my photograph. But I didn't really remember that. But then she invited us inside, and we walked through the house, and as I just glanced into the kitchen, it was black and white tiles, and just a flash of memory just happened. It was just a flash, but I thought, yeah, that's the same. I actually remember that kitchen, so that was pretty special. Then the next day, Sven and Greta, they had arranged for us to go and visit Nørrebro. That's where, it's a little village where my grandfather, my father's father, was the pastor for 25 years, from 1915 to 25 years later. And they had got in touch with the pastor there, and he took us to the church, and he had researched and written a history of my grandfather, which he then proceeded to recite to us, first in Danish and then in English for Paul, about the time that my grandfather had been the pastor in that church. It's a beautiful little church, as Lutheran churches in Denmark often are. Just outside were the graveyard, the graves of my grandparents. They were just outside that church. Then we went to the Præstegård where my father had grown up, and it was a big, in three sides. So one side was where the family lived, one side was for the Sunday school and church things, and one side was where the animals were. And it was a beautiful old building, lovely old trees, and it was just such a privilege to be able to visit and to see where that part of my family had come from. So that's, even though I don't specifically have memories of my childhood, it's very much there. When I reach Danish soil, I am Danish. Even in New Zealand, I am Danish as well. And yeah, it's just something that it's in your heart, it's where your roots are. And even though I love New Zealand and wouldn't want to live anywhere else, my home my first home was Denmark, and that's where I was born, and I'm proud of that.
Lovely. I could just see you looking at that
Well,
black and white.
oh, the kitchen. But I just brought the photos out of the album. These were the ones I took with me.
Yeah,
That's me as a 3-year-old, and that's the house.
yeah,
And there's the you know, it's,
yes. How wonderful.
and that's
It's a lovely,
that's
lovely
the old
story.
Formosa. That was the old name,
Formosa,
and that was the
yeah.
house. And this terrible. Look at this.
Yeah.
My parents gave her that when they left Denmark,
Isn't that
and she
wonderful?
still had it 51 years later.
Yes, well, why would she get rid of it?
Yeah. So
Can we have a look?
it's a terrible. Well, I shouldn't say. Beautiful lampstand.
Well, it's kind of a 30s, 1930s.
Yes, yeah, yeah.
Antique-y thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't
So
it
that's the
wonderful?
and
They
that's
certainly
the
didn't leave
house.
that in